These days, heavy duty means a bigger touchscreen, a fancier leather seat, a plastic bumper that cracks if you look at it wrong, and somehow, they're charging $90,000 for it. But back in 1973, General Motors did something that nobody in Detroit saw coming. They scrapped everything, every body panel, every design decision, and started from a completely clean sheet of paper. What they built didn't just change the truck market, it took over every farm, every job site, and every dirt road in America for the next 14 straight years. The Chevy square body, heavy gauge steel, cast iron heart, built at a time when GM actually meant it. If you miss the days when trucks were made of steel instead of recycled plastic, hit subscribe right now. Because today, we're getting into GM's greatest gamble. It's 1971, and the American truck market is turning into a war zone. Ford is pushing hard, real hard. Their F-Series trucks are gaining ground every single year, and GM's engineers know it. The pressure inside those Detroit boardrooms isn't comfortable anymore. It's the kind of pressure that keeps men up at night staring at the ceiling. GM's Action Line trucks were solid. Nobody was complaining. Contractors bought them. Farmers bought them. Working men across America trusted them. But trust only carries you so far when the competition is coming at you with everything they've got. So GM made a decision that nobody outside of those boardrooms saw coming. They scrapped everything, not some of it, not the parts that weren't working, every single body panel. Every design assumption, every engineering decision that had gotten them to where they were, gone. Clean sheet of paper, starting completely from zero. And what happened next had never happened before in the entire history of the American pickup truck. GM's engineers wheeled a truck into a wind tunnel. In 1973, they ran computer calculations on airflow and body resistance at a time when most of the farmers who would eventually buy this truck had never even touched a computer in their lives. They called their new design philosophy the rounded line, spent millions of dollars and thousands of engineering hours perfecting it. Then the truck hit the dealerships. And the men who worked for a living took one long look at those massive flat steel panels, that enormous upright grille, that wide square plant your feet and dare someone to move you stance. And they threw GM's fancy name straight in the trash. They called it the square body. No marketing meeting, no focus group, no corporate approval required. Just working men across America looking at a truck and calling it exactly what it was. That name outlasted every GM executive who ever tried to call it anything else. Now let's get under the skin of this thing, because this is where the men who actually worked these trucks are going to start remembering exactly why they loved them. And if you ever crawled underneath a square body on a cold morning to figure out why it was still running after everything you'd put it through, you already know what I'm about to say. This truck was not built to impress anybody, it was built to survive. Start with the frame. The square body rode on a full ladder frame made of heavy-gauge carbon steel, not stamped sheet metal, not lightweight modern alloys engineered to crumple on impact. The square body rode on a full ladder frame made of heavy-gauge carbon steel, not stamped sheet metal, not lightweight modern alloys engineered to crumple on impact. Actual thick, heavy, serious steel that you could feel the moment you kicked it. The kind of frame that didn't flex under a heavy load, it just absorbed it. Quietly, without drama, like it wasn't even trying. And then there was the front suspension on the 4x4 K-Series trucks. While Ford was running their twin I-beam front suspension, an engineering solution that always seemed to need one more alignment, Chevy put a solid front axle under their K-Series 4x4s. A big, heavy, cast-iron solid axle that connected both front wheels into one brutally simple unit. Did it ride like a luxury sedan? Absolutely not. It rode like a farm tractor, stiff, deliberate. Every rock and rut in the road coming straight through the steering wheel and into your hands. But here's what that solid axle could do that no independent suspension ever could. You could drop it into a ditch. You could drag it through a flooded field. You could put it through a buse that would snap a modern truck's suspension components like dry kindling, and that axle would come out the other side asking for more. Working men didn't need a comfortable ride. They needed something that wouldn't quit. Then came the engines. And this is where the square body stopped being just a tough truck and became a legend. The 350 small block, cast iron block, cast iron heads, a simple 2-barrel carburetor sitting on top like it had nothing to prove. 165 horsepower from the factory. Numbers that sound modest until you understand that this engine made its power low and slow, right where hauling and towing actually happen. A 16-year-old with a Chilton manual and a basic socket set could pull a 350 apart on a Saturday afternoon and have it back together before dinner. No computer diagnostics, no specialty tools, no dealership required, just iron, just mechanics, just a man and an engine that made complete sense. And then there was the 454 big block for the men who looked at the 350 and decided it still wasn't enough. The 454 displaced 454 cubic inches of pure cast iron motivation. It didn't make polite power. It made the kind of low-end torque that would snap your neck, leaving a stoplight with an empty bed. Hook a loaded cattle trailer to a 454 square body, and that truck would pull with a calm, effortless authority that made everything else on the road feel completely inadequate. No turbochargers, no intercoolers, no boost controllers or electronic wastegates, just massive displacement, massive torque, and an engine so mechanically simple that fixing it on the side of a dirt road with basic hand tools wasn't just possible, it was expected. That was the entire philosophy of the square body drivetrain. Build it from iron, keep it simple, make it fixable by the man who owns it. And it worked better than GM probably ever imagined it would. Here is the part that nobody at GM ever planned for. They built this truck to be aerodynamic. They spent millions of dollars in wind tunnels and computer labs trying to make it slice through the air more efficiently than anything that had come before it. What they accidentally built was the most practical, most repairable, most farmer-friendly work truck in the history of the American automobile. And the irony runs deep. Those massive flat steel panels that GM's engineers designed for wind resistance, the panels that gave this truck its square, upright, no-nonsense stance, turned out to be the single greatest feature a working man could ask for. You could pound a dent out with a body hammer in 10 minutes. No special tools, no body shop appointment, no insurance claim. Just a hammer, a dolly, and a man who knew what he was doing. Back to work before lunch. Try that with a modern aluminum truck panel. The square body spread across America not because of a marketing campaign, not because of a celebrity endorsement or a Super Bowl commercial. It spread because word traveled, job site to job site, farm to farm. One working man telling another that this was the truck that could handle whatever you threw at it. It became the default platform for snowplow rigs almost immediately. The solid front axle that rode like a tank, the same one that city drivers complained about, turned out to be exactly what you needed when you were pushing 3 feet of wet snow at 2 in the morning on a rural highway. Independent suspension components fail under that kind of stress. That solid axle just pushed. Tow truck operators figured it out next. Then the ranchers. Then the construction crews. Then every farmer from Montana to Mississippi who needed something that would start on a cold January morning without argument. And here is the thing that still gets talked about in garages and farm shops across this country today. You could park a square body in a field, hood up, exposed to the elements, birds nesting in the air filter, sitting completely untouched for 5 years straight. Come back with a fresh battery and a can of gas. That cast iron 350 would fire. Not eventually, not after some coaxing and mechanical persuasion. It would just fire, like it had been waiting patiently for you to come back and give it something to do. No computer modules to corrode, no sensor arrays to fail, no fragile electronic systems buried under layers of plastic trim that cost $400 to diagnose and $2,000 to replace. Just cast iron, just carburation, just mechanical systems so fundamentally simple that any man with a basic wrench set and a reasonable amount of determination could fix whatever was wrong on the side of a dirt road, in a barn, in a field, without calling anybody for help. That self-sufficiency meant everything to the men who depended on these trucks for their livelihoods. A farmer with a broken-down truck isn't just inconvenienced, he's losing money. He's missing deadlines. He's watching his day collapse around him. The square body almost never put a man in that position, and when it did, he could fix it himself. That is not a small thing. That is the entire difference between a tool and a liability. And for 14 straight years, the square body was the most reliable tool on the American job site. GM built it to win an aerodynamic battle with Ford. America turned it into something that will never be forgotten. Nothing built by human hands lasts forever. Not the farms, not the job sites, and eventually, not even the trucks that held them all together for 14 straight years. By the mid-1980s, the winds were shifting inside General Motors. Fuel economy standards were tightening, emissions regulations were demanding cleaner, more modern solutions, and the accountants were having conversations that the engineers didn't always win anymore. In 1987, after 14 years of absolute dominance, GM retired the square body. 14 years. This truck was born during the Nixon administration. It survived the oil crisis, the malaise era, and an entire decade of economic uncertainty that broke companies far less committed than General Motors. It came out the other side still sitting on top of the American truck market with its boots on. But in 1987, it was done. The GMT 400 replaced it, a newer, rounder, more aerodynamic truck that genuinely moved the technology forward. Fuel injection instead of carburetors, a smoother, more compliant ride, better efficiency numbers that made the regulators and the accountants happy at the same time. And to be straight with you, it wasn't a bad truck, but it wasn't the square body. The men who had worked alongside these trucks their entire lives felt it the moment they sat in the new one. Something was different, something quieter, something that didn't push back against you the same way, something that didn't feel like it was built to outlast the man driving it. The GMT 400 was a better truck on every spec sheet that ever existed, but spec sheets don't tell the whole story. The square body wasn't just steel and iron and carburetor fuel. It was a philosophy, a commitment to building something so fundamentally tough and so fundamentally simple that the man who owned it never had to depend on anybody else to keep it running. That philosophy died in 1987, and the American truck has never fully gotten it back. The Ford guys will tell you their bullnose F-Series was tougher. They'll argue all day long about their solid front axles and their inline-six engines and their blue oval reliability. And honestly, that's a fair fight. But the Chevy square body didn't just work hard, it redefined what a work truck was supposed to be. 14 years, every farm, every job site, every dirt road in America. Cast iron doesn't lie, so let's settle this right now. Who built the ultimate unbreakable American farm truck? The Ford Bullnose or the Chevy square body? Drop your answer in the comments, leave a like, and I'll see you in the next one.